Hi guys, welcome to part one of a three-part video series where I will show you how to keep these in tune. So we'll go with the Floyd Rose first, since that seems to be what most players use. With the Floyd Rose, it can be a struggle to keep them in tune sometimes. I found that out the hard way. I've been playing Floyd Rose guitars since early 2018, and I've learned a multitude of tricks to keep them in tune after you string them up. So the first thing is you may not be stretching your strings enough, and I find that to be with every guitar player, not just you or just really anybody out there. You may not be stretching your strings enough. I like to stretch mine roughly about 5 times or a little more. I like to stretch them to where I'll tune them up to the pitch where I want them, and I'll stretch them out, and I'll keep stretching them until I stretch them out and they go a hair out of tune. At that point, I think you're good to go. I always do one extra time for good measure. But another thing is the nut. Now, Floyd Rose nut, as you know, it has those little clamps. And with those clamps, the strings will eventually create a groove within the nut and the clamps itself. And once that happens, the strings might be shifting slightly underneath that nut and causing it to catch where it might make your guitar go up in pitch. Another thing is your string tree. Now your string tree, what that does is that will keep the strings down at level with the nut. If you didn't know, a Floyd Rose nut isn't exactly straight, it's a little angled. At least that's how I see it. So you want that to touch you want the string to touch the edge of the nut. Now, if it doesn't do that and you go to clamp these down, your strings are going to go up in pitch, and you don't want that. You want to try to get them as close as possible to where you want them. And say if that is how that is, and it's still going up a little bit in pitch, another trick is back here with these screws, just loosen them a tad bit. That's another trick I've learned. And when you go to stretch your strings, there is no need to go crazy. Just go around the 7th fret, give them a nice tug. Not too hard, obviously, or you might snap a string, and you don't want that. Then I think something that gets overlooked by a majority of players out there is their springs, depending on how old they are. They're fairly old, they might be too stretched out. I had this issue with the Kahler. The springs were like 15 years old. So what would happen is I would go to push down on the bar, pull up, and it would never return to 0. And that's no good, obviously. You want that guitar to stay in tune as much as possible when you're messing with the bar. And I noticed, like, some of mine, this is just an extra tech tip here. The fine tuners, they might get a little rough after a while. What you want to get is like some WD-40 while you're changing strings, and spray those down, move them around, get that in there, worked good. And that helps with these screws too. So that's really the gist of keeping these well in tune, like when you're using the bar in that. Now with a Kahler, grab a Kahler here. So this is a Kahler. I'm not going to spoil it. I almost spoiled it. But so with the Kahler, it's better because there's a little screw here that locks the bridge. I don't run into too many tuning issues with this, but if you have a Kahler guitar, you may not have to do this, but soldering the ends of the top 3 strings here. I don't do the bass side, they're thick enough, but you can buy reinforced ball end strings. They're hard to find and they're expensive. I just say solder them, you're better off doing that. And another thing is an issue I had on this particular guitar. So underneath here, the wood isn't exactly the strongest. In fact, it was all collapsed and stuff when I got it, and I had to get it fixed. I didn't have the time for it, so I just palmed it off on someone else to do it for me. But that's a pretty simple fix. I'm sure you can find a tutorial on YouTube or something. So yeah, and thing is, like, if that nut's moving, you want that nice and down. That way it does not move, because if it moves, I even had somebody tell me that if that nut moves, it doesn't make a difference. That's a lie. You don't want that nut moving. If that nut moves, it's going to shift. I had it like a couple weeks ago. It was popping and that, and I knew it was the nut, so fixed that up real good, and it stays in tune perfectly. Now I can use the shit out of the bar, and I don't have to worry about it going out of tune. You don't want that. So that's my advice on how to keep these in tune. And another thing is, like when you're working on, say, a Floyd Rose guitar, not a Kahler guitar, this won't apply to that one, but I have a little trick I've been using for years, and it's when I'm restringing, and I got to keep that bridge even because when I'm cleaning the fretboard, I don't want any strings getting in my way. So I like to take one of these, a little analog stick from like an old controller or something, one where you could change them out. I don't know how high this one is. It's pretty low. And I'll take various sizes of guitar picks. This is like an 88 and 1.5, what I used to use. And I would put it under the screws here once the strings are in. Don't do it with the strings off and you're going to screw them in. Use a this is called a trem block for that. So you just put that underneath. I put it underneath the like the little claw parts there. That's for when I'm changing strings, but for when I'm tuning it, any intonation, just it varies on like how many picks I use, but it'll keep it roughly even. You can adjust it, of course. So like this should be pretty even. Yeah, this is really close to even. You want that always parallel with the body. You don't want it up or down. Now when it comes to intonating, buy one of these if you're a Floyd Rose user. Save yourself the headache of loosening the string all the time and having to move that around. This has been my best friend. That's basically it. Part 2 will be about what upgrades I recommend for the Floyd Rose, and maybe a little bit more on how keeping in tune works with the different various bridges that are out there, because with Floyd Roses there's a multitude of bridges. Kahler, it's pretty streamlined. There's only like 3 main ones, but with Floyd Rose there's so many variants out there. So keep an eye out for that, and you guys have a good one.